Welcome to all. In this video I am going to explain the truth of the Thai country. If you are planning to travel to Thailand or contemplating the possibility of being in the Thai country for a long period, whether for work or sentimental issues, it would be good for you to know that Thailand is a country with very harsh laws on criticism of the monarchy. In Thailand there is an extreme fanaticism about the late king named Bhumibol Adulyadej and about his acts of helping the Thai people during the periods of the last century. There are many things that can be thanked. One example is helping his people build schools and irrigation systems and pipelines in cities where infrastructure was needed at that time in the mid-20th century. So far so good, and you understand the why of the Thai people. Feels grateful and feels affection for his king, and it is understandable that they love their king. But how did this king took the power? What circumstances were the ones that proclaimed him king? Let's start on this point and address the issue. Part 1. Beginning of Siam. From its beginnings in the Yudaya era, Siam was stratified with a feudal system known as Sakti Naya, where from the slave and the beggar to the crown prince they had a clear place on the scale. The Sakti Naya was measured through the number of rai, which were initially acres of arable rice area. These points located the citizens in the social scale. The king, with his absolute power, had 100,000, the heir 50,000. The plebeians with more points, ministers, to call it somehow, 10,000. Then the scale was falling exponentially on many other members of royalty and courtiers. Closer to the royal people, a clerk or a messenger had 50 points, not bad. 30 a private soldier, 20 a head of family who owned a house. 10 for the peasants, that is, the immense majority. 5 for beggars. It is easy to visualize the hierarchical differences between 100,000 rai for one man and 10 for most of the people.
So let's continue with chapter 1. The absolute power of the monarch, on the other hand, is often referred to among historians as far superior to that of contemporary European monarchs. Some have seen in this capital concentration of power an obstacle to social development that occurred in later centuries in Europe. Some very well-known anecdotes about the monarchical power represent well the difference. It is well known that one could not look directly at the monarch, or, well, one could, but one received a crush on the face, in the act. It is also known that commoners could not touch members of the royal family under penalty of death. Not even to save their lives. It is hard to believe what I will tell you next, but there was a Thai queen, Queen Sunanda Kumaratana, one of the 4 wives and the 96 women of King Chulalongkorn, who, sadly, drowned with her daughter when falling from a boat before the eyes of the plebeians. For if the plebeians touched her, they would be executed after saving her life, and so the queen drowned before the eyes of the plebeians, for if the commoners touched her physically, they would execute them after performing the act. With any luck, one of them caught the irony. In this part is where the story of the king stars. The Thailand of the 30s and 40s begins.
Ananda Mahidol, older brother of Bhumibol Adulyadej, was about to receive the throne when, on the morning of June 9, 1946, 20-year-old King Rama VIII of Siam, he was shot in the head and died in his room in the Grand Palace building of Bangkok. Later that day, his brother was proclaimed King Rama IX. Within minutes of Ananda's death, the crime scene was deliberately manipulated to hide the evidence of what actually happened. Those who were in the Bayrampiman Hall that morning have never publicly revealed the truth of what happened, and only one of them was alive until recently, King Bhumibol himself. The official investigation into the death of Ananda considered three possibilities: that he was killed, committed suicide, or committed suicide accidentally. The investigation deliberately excluded a fourth possibility, that Ananda was accidentally shot by another person. This fourth possibility is the truth. Ananda Mahidol was shot and killed by his brother Bhumibol. It seems inconceivable that the murder was premeditated. It was a terrible tragic accident or aberration, and has pursued Bhumibol Adulyadej ever since. Bhumibol, it is clear that he has suffered a lifetime of shame and sadness over what happened that morning in 1946. Many Thais believe that the truth must remain buried, because revealing it now will only cause more pain. But Thailand in the 21st century is stuck in an agonizing crisis due to the refusal of powerful factions among the elite to allow open and honest debate about the country's past and its future. The Majesty's Law has affected Thailand. Despite the destruction of evidence, and the fact that those involved lied about what happened, it is possible to reconstruct how Ananda died. The first key point is that there is no credible possibility that an unknown killer sneaked into the Great Hall that morning, took the automatic Ananda Colt .45 pistol from his bedside cabinet, shot him with his head and escaped, without being seen by anyone. The killer could only have been someone at the Bayrampamin Hall. Up to this point we must put ourselves in the place of the Thai monarchs and think that any impact that could have a similar event would be negative for the country in question, and even more coming out of a world war. Immediately after Ananda's death, it was widely assumed that he had committed suicide. The great assembly of princes and politicians who gathered in the Bayrampamin Hall after Ananda's death did not spend much time discussing whether he had been murdered by an intruder, as they surely would have done if there had been genuine suspicions of it. Was concerned about how to explain Ananda's death to the public. Ananda's mother begged Priti Banomyong, the inspirational statesman who was prime minister at the time, to declare that the shooting was a self-inflicted accident rather than suicide. In part to preserve the royal prestige, Priti and the government complied, and followed their orders. But the story that Ananda committed suicide by mistake was never remotely plausible. The Colt .45 is a relatively heavy pistol, weighing more than 1 kilogram when fully loaded, and to be fired requires considerable pressure to be placed not only on the trigger but also simultaneously on a safety panel at the back of the butt. The chances that Ananda did this by accident, while the pistol aimed at his forehead, were extremely few. In addition, the weapon was found next to the left hand of Ananda. But he was right-handed. The evidence also seemed to suggest that Ananda was lying on his back when he was shot. And he did not wear his glasses, without which his vision was frightening. It seemed hardly credible that Ananda had been playing with her .45 Colt while lying on her back and without her glasses. On the afternoon of Wednesday, September 28, 1948, the King Ananda murder trial began. Royal pages Bhattathomasran and Chitsing Asani, and former Royal Secretary Chau Pathumrose were accused of conspiring to kill the king in a plot masterminded by Priti. The trial and appeals were to drag on for more than 6 years.